Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to ScrivTalk, where we talk with Scrivenings Press authors about their books, writing journeys, and the stories behind their stories. I'm Leanna George, author and co-owner of Scrivenings Press, and I'm so glad you've joined us today because I have the pleasure of welcoming one of my very dear friends and favorite people, fellow author Hope Dougherty, about her upcoming romance novel, Beach House Rescue. Before we dig in, though, let me tell you a little bit about Hope. Hope holds a master's degree in English and taught at East Carolina University in York Technical College. She's written six novels and one novella. She's an avid writer. Her latest, Forever Free, won the Faith, Love, and Hope Reader's Choice Award for 2025, which is a really big honor. So, congrats to her on that. She and her husband live in North Carolina and delight in visiting with their two daughters and twin sons. Hope, so welcome, Hope, to Script Talk. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So, when did you start writing? When did you start writing your novels?
In 2009,
Okay.
we were weeks away from my oldest daughter's high school graduation.
Uh-huh.
And I realized that the other three were going to follow behind
Yeah.
2 years and then 2 years. And I knew I was working myself out of a job. And I had always wanted to write, but it always scared me.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't want to go back to teaching. And I had this idea, sort of a daydream, and it was also a procrastination. I was supposed to be doing something different, and I saw this daydream, and I started writing it out, and it became one of the early scenes in Irish Encounter, my first novel.
Your first novel.
So,
Okay.
so
All right.
2009.
Okay. All right. And had you always wanted to write, or was that just something that just, like you said, popped up when you realized your job experience was going to be kind of over?
I had always wanted to write. It was one of those um, secret desires that I really didn't talk about.
Hmm.
And I had written for local magazines and local newspapers, not any kind of um, reporter or anything like that. I don't like conflict,
Yeah.
but just essays, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I knew I always wanted to do that. But the whole idea of writing a novel from the beginning to the end with a middle to keep everybody's attention just was so daunting and intimidating that that's one reason I didn't talk about it. It was a deep down desire. So
Yeah, yeah. It reminded
I
me, 'cause
did
when you said that, when my
want to
oldest
do it.
daughter started graduating from high school, I did the same thing. I looked at my life and I was like, I've been a stay-at-home mom for 18 years. Now what? Right? And so I went through, and they're like, all these gurus are like, tell us what you're good at, what you're passionate about. So I was like, okay, well, I would love to write a novel. I love organizing, and I love playing tennis. And so I was like, well, no one's going to pay to watch me play tennis. And I don't think anybody would want to read anything I have to write. So I'll stay with the organizing. So I kind of did the same thing, but then eventually it gave way to the writing. And
Mhm.
that's how I found
Yeah.
myself with a story to tell. So that's great. I think I've known you for all these years. I was like, I really don't know how she got into writing or how long she's been writing. So I thought, okay, let me just ask.
Yeah.
Okay, so what continues to draw you to writing stories centered on love, faith, and hope?
I lie. I know my name is Hope, but truly, I like positive stories. I like hope-filled stories. I don't have time for all of those other kinds of. There is a quotation, Jane Austen. I have it on my wall, and it says, "Let other pens dwell in guilt and misery." And I think, yes, other people can do that, and I will stick in my lane and write happy stories.
Well, I mean, that's one way to do it. So I guess we won't see you crossing over anytime soon to like mystery and suspense or anything like that.
Yeah, I love mystery. I really do. And I do have one suspense, romantic suspense,
Okay.
but everything turns out in the end. But I I enjoy what I'm doing, right?
Good. Good.
Yeah.
And we love it too. So I'm not trying to get you to go anywhere. It's just, after you write so many, you kind of start I kind of start thinking, do you want to write something else? Do you want to try to
Mhm.
challenge yourself as a writer, and
Mhm.
go into something like you said, romantic suspense or something like that?
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
I do have I guess it's a Western idea in the back of my mind, that kind of thing. And I have some other ideas, and I think we might talk about that later.
yeah.
But yeah, so I understand what you mean.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, now I'm very intrigued. So I can't wait to see what else you've got going on. But the people are here for your upcoming release, Beach House Rescue, which we've been promoting. And so let's talk a little bit about that. What was the inspiration or the spark for this story?
Like what happens in a lot of my books, I start with a scene. A scene just pops up. And the first scene in this novel started rolling around in my mind. And I just looked at my notes the other day, and it was August 2023, when I first started free writing
Mm.
about what I called it a vacation story. So at that point. And we live about 2 hours in from the coast of North Carolina. So going to the beach for a day is just easy. We can get up in the morning and drive. So we don't have a place at the beach. Lots of friends do. But it is just the beach is uppermost on our minds, especially in the summer, I think, especially here. And so I just thought, you know what, that's a fun beginning, and I would like to explore how it goes. So that's how. There was nothing beyond that inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that leads me to two more questions because you've touched on things I want to ask you about. Where you talked about, you said the title started out as vacation, but how did it evolve? Where did you come? How did you finally come to Beach House Rescue as the title?
That's so interesting. I hate titles, and I'm terrible at writing titles. So in my mind, in fact, in my Scrivener's app, it's still called Vacation Story. I never changed
Oh,
that.
that's funny.
But then one day I started thinking, oh, sun, sand, and summer storms. And that's what it became. For all last summer, I was playing around with stuff, with titles like Beach House, Bungle, Beach House. So, like, I don't know if you remember the Beach House Bingo movies. I am older than you are. So anyway,
Barely.
they were fun beach, fun beach movies. And so all of these were running around in my mind, and I sent sun, sand, and summer storms. And in that one email, I said, this is it. If anybody can think of a better one. In one of our interviews for something else, you had said, hey, Hope, how sold are you on that title? And I said, hey, if you can come up with something. And so you sent a list of several. I wasn't really sold on those. I think Linda, the other owner, had some questions, and I went to a writing conference. Actually, I went to my book club that night and threw around some titles, and they hated sun, sand, and summer storms. So I was like, okay, that's good that I'm not using that one. And then I went to a writing retreat that weekend, and those women sort of helped me come up with all kinds of ideas, generate some ideas, and we landed on Beach House Rescue. But it was a process.
Well, one, I did ask that question because we did go through that process together. I was just trying to have a little bit of fun with you, but also
Mhm.
because I think people don't understand how difficult it really can be to come up with these titles, right? I mean,
And they're so important.
they are. They're so important. And if we don't get it right, if it's not appealing enough, if it's not right, it doesn't reflect the story well, it can really ruin it for the reader's experience.
Right.
So
Hmm.
it is a process, and it's not as easy as people think. I mean,
Hmm.
it's not like we just come out of it with thin air and go, "Oh, this is it. It's going to be perfect and everybody's going to love it." Right?
Right.
No, it can sometimes be like what you had to do and just, go through different stages with it until you finally came with something that clicked. So,
Which is interesting because the writing of the story is a process,
mm.
but the title, coming up with the title,
You would
that's
think, right?
also,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, you teased a little bit about the scene that popped in your head, right? It's such a
Mhm.
fun setup at the beginning of the story where Tessa, your main female lead, thinks that there's a burglar in her beach house, while Wyatt, the main male lead, thinks she's a squatter.
Yeah.
So, how did this pop into your mind? Like, right, this mistaken identity, forced proximity, beginning come to you.
She wakes up from a nap and she's befuddled, discombobulated, and I am not a napping person.
Mhm.
I feel worse when I wake up from a nap. And
Uh-huh.
when I was in college, I found some research and it said if you could just nap for 15 minutes, that's enough to sort of reset,
Mhm.
refresh. And so now Wednesdays are my heaviest day during the week of jobs I have to do. And so I actually, in the mid-afternoon, I will set my phone alarm for 15 minutes so that I can just close my eyes and just be quiet and rest. Because if I go into that deep sleep, even for 30 minutes, I just wake up and I'm kind of like shaking and unsteady, truly. I don't
Yeah.
feel good. And so I thought about if she's that kind of a person and she is waking up thinking she's dreaming at first, but no, it's really a live person and a man. And she knows she's supposed to be in there. She is not a squatter.
Uh-huh.
And so how would that play out? That's the way it was in my mind.
Yeah.
What would happen? How would we go from there?
Yeah.
So
And we
yeah,
don't want to give any spoilers, but it is a very cute opening. So you
thank
definitely
you.
want to read that in there. So let's
Okay.
talk about Tessa and Wyatt a little bit because they're so opposite in so many ways. So she's
Mhm.
artistic and open-hearted, and he's very structured,
Yeah.
practical, and by the book. So how did you decide to pair those two characters together? Of all the character personalities, what made you do those two?
I really like the enemies to more, enemies to lovers, that trope.
Uh-huh.
Because I like that tension and that the clash, and it's not exactly um, attraction at first sight, but it's chemistry because
Yeah.
they don't like each other. So I'm always intrigued by that trope, much more than the friend to
Yeah.
more.
Sure.
So I knew that I wanted their characters to be opposite in that way.
Mhm.
Um, and I just thought, oh, once I realized his backstory, I knew the reason that he would be so against the art and artists and anything creative like that.
Mm.
And he has the military background, the rigid, because he's really had to pull himself up, to use a cliche, by his bootstraps
Uh-huh.
to get where he is. And it's because of that characteristic that he's just rigid and he goes for what he wants and that kind of thing. And he's not sidetracked or distracted, that he has no time for the fluff of what he perceives as art.
Gotcha. Okay. Now you mentioned military. Your sons are military, aren't they?
Yes, they are. They're captains in the army right now. Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you for mentioning
Yeah.
that. So I was thinking about them too. I mean, it's a nod to all the people in the military
Sure.
now and who have served. So I
Yeah.
like doing that too.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and they say write what you know. So,
Yes.
I'm sure you've had some insights into that lifestyle and the personality as well. So,
Yes. And my sons are, they can be rigid in some things, but they are looser than Wyatt is, and they play the piano beautifully, so they have their own creativity.
yeah.
So
That's cool. That's really
yeah.
neat. Well, let's talk a little bit about Tessa because she's at a crossroads in her life, trying to decide whether she wants to go back to teaching or
Mhm.
pursue her art more fully.
Mhm.
What did you enjoy about exploring her journey towards embracing her gifts and calling?
Um, I like the idea that God is big enough that he can give all different kinds of gifts, all different kinds of blessings to different people.
Mhm.
And I think I'm going to paraphrase something from the book. There's a line about don't, something like, don't forsake the ordinary for the extraordinary,
Mm.
meaning Tessa had a problem seeing all of her gifts, all of her talents as art. She had one idea about what art was,
Mm.
painting. But, art can encompass all kinds of things from music to I used to tell my mother, who was left-handed and she didn't think she was artistic, but she was a wonderful cook.
Mm.
And even this past weekend, someone at church mentioned my mother. She has been gone for 4 years, and they were talking about what a good cook she was. So I was saying, you are artistic in the kitchen,
Oh
mother,
yeah,
mom.
for sure.
And so I think, especially now, those charcuterie boards, they look beautiful.
Mhm.
And and I wanted to think about that. Their art is all kinds of things,
Yeah.
and that's the piece I wanted to push. Art can be anything. Art can be lots of different things. Yeah.
Sure. I agree. When I watch those TV shows, those cooking TV shows, and they've got like 30 minutes to plate some really weird dish and it comes out and then it just looks gorgeous. And of course, it tastes gorgeous according to the judges, that truly is art, right? And I think so many
Mhm.
times as society, we've confined it to certain things, right? It's got to be a painting or a sculpture or, you know, uh, even writing. But I think as a society we're learning and we're seeing that it's more than just that. It's a lot of different things. And so I like that you're exploring that um, in different ways and just breaking that mold of what people think art should be.
Well, I serve on our county arts council, and for several years now. And one reason that they asked me to join is because they wanted to strengthen the literary, the reading, the book, the writing arm of it, because they had been focusing so much on, like you said, the sculpture or the painting, and that was it. So we're trying to expand. So
Oh, that's
that's
good. Yeah.
probably where that came from too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about Wyatt because he carries some wounds from his childhood that affect how he sees Tessa and
Mhm.
how he responds to his younger sister. So, what was most important to you as you developed his character arc?
I really wanted people to understand that he wasn't just this rigid person for no reason, that he really did have those wounds. And he had a hard childhood because of uh, different things in his life. And I wanted to show him loosening a little bit to the possibility of art. I wanted to show a different side to him, the warmth that he begins to share between, that the relationship between his sister, his half sister, and himself. I wanted people to understand that, not think it was, oh, now he's doing a 180. It
Yeah,
really was a hard thing for him to come to. He kind of resisted it for a while.
yeah,
But I did see that he grew, and I hope readers will see that.
yeah.
And I did try to make him soft because he enjoys cooking.
Mm,
Not make him soft, but I wanted him to be more three-dimensional than just this robotic former military person.
yeah.
Um, and the reason that he cooks comes from his childhood. He had to learn. So there was a reason for that as well. So that's what I wanted to show with Wyatt.
Ah, that's really neat. That's really neat. Yeah, I mean, we always want to see some kind of growth, right? And I think it's in that group growth that's where we find ourselves rooting for these people because we see that they're wounded. We see that that wound has caused them to act a certain way. And we want to see that change in them because, we know it's going to be for the better. So it's always beautiful when you can write that like you have. So that's awesome. So let's talk about his younger half sister, Skylie, because when she comes onto the scene, the dynamic of the story, just becomes a lot richer and more meaningful. And so, what role does she play in the relationship between Tessa and Wyatt? And you touched on this a minute ago, but a little bit about Wyatt's own growth.
I think she's a buffer between the two because when she does come on the scene, they're not completely still at odds. They have begun to see each other a little bit differently. Um, but I think she helps because they join forces to figure out, okay, what are we going to do with this teenager now here? So I liked that part about it. I liked that they had to figure things out together because he was completely out of his depth. And so he can see um, how Tessa is valuable in the situation
Yeah.
for him. Yeah,
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
she can help him in
And
ways.
we do see a softening in him toward Tessa, but of course towards Skylar too.
That's good. That's good.
Mhm.
So we talked about your title, Beach House Rescue, right? And in the story, the idea seems to reach beyond just one situation or one character being rescued. And I know that the rescue wasn't the first title option that you had, but rescue seems to be a theme that goes throughout the entire story from the very beginning. So what does that mean for you? What was your intention in that? Or maybe you didn't realize that, but it was the intention.
That's interesting. I like the way you put that at the end because I really didn't. I don't think I was thinking in that way until this title popped up. And I had a little bit of hesitation, to be honest, with that title to begin with, because I didn't want people to think it was a suspense, rescue.
Oh,
Oh,
uh-huh.
who's being
Sure.
rescued? But Tessa is there because she's trying to, or her job for the summer is to refurbish this beach house for her best friend so that her best friend's husband will give up the his idea of selling it. She
Mm,
wants her best friend to be able to keep this as a legacy. It's been in her family for generations, and she wants to make it a show place for her friend, so that the husband will, ease up.
yeah.
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 So in that sense, the house is being rescued
Okay.
for the family, that kind of thing.
Yeah. But
And
and
then I guess Wyatt's he is being rescued from his one-dimensional path. He's expanding, he's growing. So I see that also as a rescue.
yeah. Yeah. That's great. And I think that that's what's the word I'm looking for? Um, it's awesome to see how that comes together without you really realizing that's what it was about, right? That was a
Mhm.
major theme. Um,
Mhm.
it just makes it all the more beautiful.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, so I love your tagline. I went and looked it up, and I think it's just beautiful. Trading guilt and misery for Gracie and mercy is your author tagline. So, um, how do you see that reflected in this novel?
um I think I see it with Wyatt for sure because he gives up the misery of just wallowing in his childhood and all the things that he didn't get from his childhood. And I think Tessa gives up the guilt. She comes from, well, she taught for 1 year,
Mhm.
and she is working on giving up to teach because the someone really puts a guilt trip on her. Oh, these students need you, and they won't have art if you don't come back and teach. And she has to fight that guilt
Mm,
just to give it up because, in is it Romans? The book of Romans, there's no condemnation, there's no guilt
yeah.
for those who are in Christ Jesus. And so God's path for her is that it's not teaching. Teaching is a wonderful, I come from a long line of teachers. I have a lot of teachers in my family.
Mhm.
I taught for a while, and teaching is a wonderful profession, but I am very opinionated about teachers. And I think if you are called to be a teacher, that's wonderful. And if you are not, find what you are called to be.
Yeah.
And Tessa isn't called to be a teacher. She's called to be an artist. That's what God has gifted her in. And so she has to work on giving up that guilt, um, so that she can live the life that God has planned for her. So,
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, how did you come up with that tagline?
well, I sort of paraphrase Jane Austen's line, let other pens dwell in guilt and misery.
Ah,
And I loved it. And when I was working on a tagline that just kept coming up, and I thought, well, I'll use it as a jumping off point. So the guilt and the misery is there, but I put in God's grace and God's mercy.
love it. Love it. So I'm assuming then that you're a huge Jane Austen.
I do enjoy, yeah, I enjoy Jane Austen.
I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I have never read a Jane Austen novel, ever.
That's okay. I'm not one of these people. I am not judging. I'm not. I just
Thank you.
read Wuthering Heights last year, for the first time. I know not Jane Austen, but I'm a classic.
Mhm.
And I read it and I was shocked that it has been, you know, hawked as a romance for all these years, and it is not.
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
okay.
It's I'm glad I read it and I can check that off. It's
Yeah.
not. So you read what you like to read.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I'm giving up that guilt, right, and misery
Yes, exactly.
when
Yeah.
it comes to my reading, because life is short. There are way too many books, and I don't want to have to be reading a book just because you're supposed to,
It's on a list. Right.
right? Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
well, speaking of writing process, so I want to switch a little bit because we don't want to give away too much of the story, and I feel like we've covered it really well and given enough people the intrigue and the interest that they might need to go ahead and pick up the book. But let's talk a little bit more about your writing process itself. So, what kind of writer? How do you describe yourself as a writer?
I am a seat of the pants, so I don't write a an outline
Mhm.
beyond, they meet, they're intrigued, they have conflict, and happily ever after. So that's my outline. And so I don't, sometimes I don't even know how they're going to get together. I know they have to get together, but I don't know how it's going to happen. And I just write day to day. Um, and it's almost like reading a story, what's going to happen today kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I am a pain. I mean, I do research to begin with. I know as much as I can about each character. I
Mhm.
fill out character worksheets, what their likes are, what kind of wounds they have, from childhood, that kind of thing. And so I start with that and I go from there.
Okay. Well, speaking
Mhm.
about, character wounds and researching your characters and developing, who was your favorite character to write in Beach House Rescue?
I really liked writing Skylar, and I've never written a teenager before.
Oh,
I like to write older people. I've written several characters, secondary characters who maybe a great aunt or, an uncle or something like that. And I always have enjoyed those characters. So this was interesting, and it was difficult too because I wanted to get the right mix of how she would really sound, so slang, but at the same time, I didn't want people, if somebody picks it up 5 years from now, to think, "Oh, nobody says this anymore." So,
right. True.
um, we were several of us at Scrivenings were working on that slang to get it right, but I just liked her personality, her bubbliness, whatever you want to call it. I like how she kind of gave Wyatt a run for his money, pushed back on a lot of things. So, yeah, I think she was the most fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have to be careful with those, but I
Mhm,
usually tend to be, the person, the character you think you're gonna have the most trouble writing because it kind of makes you uncomfortable is usually the character you're most endeared to. So,
mhm,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly, exactly. Um, so what was the easiest or your favorite scene to write?
I really liked that first scene. It came to me first, and I think it's funny and it's not expected. So I thought it was fun.
Yeah. And on the other side of that, what was the hardest?
Um, I know that I'm a romance author. I get that. But I always have trouble because all of my children read, even my boys read my books. And it's like they're sitting on my shoulders when I'm writing the scenes when they're getting close. And, it's not anything near spice, like we talk about
Sure.
spice and romance. But I don't want them to start getting, kind of sick sick at their stomach because their mom is writing, all these things. Those are
Right.
always a little bit. It's hard to get out of my head to just write what the characters are doing.
Yeah.
To me, that's something that
Yeah.
I always struggle with a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a romance author either. And my well, my books all go follow after one another. You have to kind of read them together to understand.
Yes, and I
And there
have.
wasn't a romance in book one. There was a little bit more. You see it growing in book two, and then
Right.
eventually you see it in book three. But I had hard time writing those scenes as well.
Yeah.
Not because I was worried about what my girls would think. It was just like I haven't dated anybody since I was 8 years old.
Exactly. Yes,
It's been a
that's
while,
it.
right?
Yeah.
Because I like to think of myself as a more mature character than an older character, but but
Yeah.
writing young love is not my specialty. So
Hmm.
yeah, absolutely. So just kind of wrapping as we start wrapping things up, what is it you hope readers will take away from Tessa and Wyatt's story after they turn the final page?
The success looks different for everybody. Just like I kind of touched on this earlier, but Tess thinks art is one thing, and she expands to accept art can be several things. But I think you can put that idea in any situation. I've talked with my children about friends graduating high school and going on a different path. All my children went to college. Some of their friends, or some of the friends in their high school classes, didn't, or they went to a 2-year college, or they just went into business, or, our paths to success are different, but they can still be successful. And that's, I want people to understand that, and really to pursue God's path for them. That's,
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what's next for you? Well, no, I'm sorry. Let me back up. I have my list of questions here and I skipped one because I really do want to talk about your backlist because if people enjoy reading Beach House Rescue, which I'm sure they will, I want you to talk a little about books from your backlist that you might recommend they pick up next. Because you have a quite a library growing.
Growing. I have another book set on the beach. Had her a surprise. I had her a surprise. That's the novella, so it's 20 something,
Oh,
or 22, 24,000 words. So that's set on the beach. That'll be a fun one for the summer and a quick read for the summer. But it's number two in the Forever series. So
hmm.
there are three other books in that series that I think are fun. They're based on four siblings um, on Hatteras, Cape Hatteras.
Okay.
And then I mentioned a suspense for those who like suspense, Rescued Hearts. And if you want to take a vacation this summer and you don't want to, spend a lot on gas for your
Yes.
car or a plane ticket, you might want to check out
Oh, yeah.
Irish Encounter and
Yes.
visit Galway, Ireland. So
Right.
something for everybody.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Hope has definitely has something for everybody. And then you'll have another book coming out. It's a repub later this year.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. It's the title is Mars. with Venus Rising. And
Mhm.
it's a fun book to set in a little town called Mars, right outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, near where we used to live.
Oh,
So it I hear it's getting a new cover.
yeah.
So yeah.
That's good. That's good. Well, we'll have to come back and revisit with you when that releases and see. We can talk a little bit about Beach House Rescue and then we'll be able to talk a little bit about that one as well. So
Okay.
I know you've got that rehab coming up though, but what are you working on something now?
I started something a few months ago, and it is not a romance.
Oh,
um, so I don't know. But I don't know. It's based on something. It's based on an idea I had for some friends of mine when we were graduating high school.
okay.
And then something happened last fall that reminded me of, I'm being very cryptic here, but
Yes, of course, and
I'm
that's
just
okay.
still trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
But it something happened in the news that brought this thing to mind again. And I thought, wouldn't that be fun to write this idea because of the impetus, the real thing that happened. Anyway, so there's a tease, I guess. Now I've got
Yes.
to write it.
No, it's great. It's great. And I'm interested to talk with you later about it because I'm working on a story and it has some suspense in it. And I've never written suspense. So I'm kind of like, how do you do that? How do I write that? So so yeah, we can compare notes on that. That's
Okay.
interesting. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Okay. Okay. Sounds
Well,
good.
before we say goodbye, how can our audience connect with you?
I have a website, all my HopeTolerDougherty.com. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I have a readers page on Facebook.
Okay.
Um, oh, Pinterest. I'm I need to I am working on my Pinterest board for Beach House Rescue right now.
Awesome.
So I can release that closer to the book release, maybe.
Yep.
Um, let's see. I'm on BookBub, yes. If you want to leave reviews there.
Yeah.
So
And do you have a newsletter where people can hear from you on a regular
thank
basis?
you. Yes, I do. And it's on my website. Thank you for bringing that up.
Welcome.
You can sign up for it on my web through my website. And if you do sign up, you can get a Cooking with Hope recipe book
Oh,
for free.
awesome. Well, I'm sure if your mom taught you how to cook, you're probably a wonderful cook.
Oh,
So definitely want to pick up some of those recipes. So that's awesome. Well, Hope, thank you so much for joining me today and for giving us a behind the scenes look at Beach House Rescue. We're very excited to have that release this month, and I'm sure readers are going to enjoy it as well. For those of you watching, you can find out more about Hope and her books using the links in the show notes. We'll put her website as well as some of her books that she mentioned. So if you want to give those a go, you can do that as well. And of course, be sure to check Amazon for Beach House Rescue. We're coming out very soon. So thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Script Talk. We'll see you next time. Until then, happy reading. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
thank you, Leanne. Bye.
Bye.